Hey, so I just played through all the 3D Ninja Gaidens for the first time this year. I kind of just blitzed through them in quick succession, actually, over the course of like 2 months. I really enjoyed the entire series and had a great time. So I kind of just wanted to talk about that, do a little bit of a retrospective on my experience, and get kind of like rank them in terms of which ones I liked the best at the end of the video. Um, but one thing I wanted to say right off the bat, they're all great games. Every single one of the four that I played. And there was a something I wanted to clarify as well. The community kind of did me a disservice, right? Like a long time ago, I had just played through, the Neo games, Wo Long, Stranger Paradise, Rise of the Ronin hadn't been announced or released yet. And I was like, man, I just love these games. I can't get enough. Oh, how about those Ninja Gaiden games? And then, like, immediately, multiple people, like, chimed in. They're like, "Oh no, yeah, just don't play the Master Collection. It sucks. If you want to play Ninja Gaiden, you need to buy an Xbox. You need to play, Ninja Gaiden Black, Sigma 2. Ninja Gaiden 3 doesn't exist." That was like just the seemingly hive mind community opinion. Now I'm gonna try not to let what the community thinks about these games color my reviews here, because what I think is not the same as what the community thinks, and I don't want to define my review by being you know, contrarian, because that's not my experience with the games. I just wanted to clarify, if you've been in a position where you're interested in playing the Ninja Gaiden games and you're like, well, I can't play the Master Collection because those games suck. Just if you're interested and the game's on sale, $20 for these three games is an insane deal. Um, they're excellent ports. There's a lot of problems with them, right? But those are not problems that you're going to experience as somebody who's new to the Ninja Gaiden series. Those are problems that you're going to experience as someone who wants the best experience possible, as an established fan who wants the best game you can get, right? If you played the Master Collection and you're like, this game's dope, then maybe you can explore, getting the best versions of the games or whatever. But like, please don't let that ruin your the possibility of playing these great games, because that's exactly what happened to me. I went years without playing these games, and I was kicking myself because, like, what kind of Team Ninja fake fan am I if I haven't played these games? Anyway, so first game I played, I picked up the Master Collection. I played Ninja Gaiden Sigma 1, as you can imagine. And some things that game did that I really liked. The action adventure bits were interesting, right? I respect that they tried it. What I mean by that is, like, backtracking, slightly more complicated non-linear maps, key items, little puzzles. Like, I respect that they did it. DMC1 kind of did that as well. Something that, is not present in the present day DMC games. And, like, I respect it, but the problem is it wasn't very good at it, right? Like, the standards that I have for an action adventure kind of layout like that are way higher than what Ninja Gaiden 1 had on offer, and I think that was the big issue that I had. Now, the combat, it laid the fundamentals for that as well. The combat was good, right? You had, really strong block, and so, you could kind of base your play style off of, okay, I'm going to hold block, see what the new enemies are capable of doing to me. Once I've got a good, grip of what the enemies can do, then I can start attacking them back. Um, Eventually, enemies will have moves that'll, like, break your guard, and then there's like an active defense component to it, where if your guard gets broken, you have to let go of the guard button and then press it again, or you have to roll away. And I think that's interesting too, right? Like, I'm a big parry fan because I like active defense, where it's like, even when it's the enemy's turn, it's actually your turn because you're doing something to advance your game plan. So I found, the guard break dynamic interesting. There's going to be enemies that'll do chip damage to you, sometimes a lot if you're blocking, so you kind of don't want to block or get hit by those moves. You'll have enemies that can just hit you through your guard, like with a grab or an equivalent thereof. And so, there's kind of just that interesting dynamic. There's the essence system, which is a flawed but interesting system in my opinion, right? The way it works is just, you kill enemies, they'll drop essence. It could be like a blue essence that gives you health. It could be a yellow essence that's money. And then you can either pick up that essence, or, it's automatically picked up. You can either let it get absorbed, or you can hold your block button to not absorb it, and then you can use your ultimate technique to suck it up. Funny enough, that's exactly what happened on screen when I just said that. So it's an interesting system, having like a resource tied to like your money economy, but also being something that can improve your combat capabilities. But the problem is the playstyle it engenders is not interesting, right? And what I mean by that is when you just boil it down to what playstyle is this mechanic encouraging? The playstyle is unfortunately abusing the mechanic for money and also for iframes, right? And we're going to talk about this more when I get to two, but just keep that in mind. So anyway, one again, great game, awesome game. I respect what they did, and I loved the vibes. Right, it gave me real good action movie vibes from my childhood. I thought that was neat. Um, Being introduced to what the Ninja Gaiden series is, what kind of gameplay Ryu has, I thought that was really cool. But unfortunately, the game just really didn't grip me. So as soon as I had finished the first playthrough, I was like, all right, I'm ready to move on to two. Play the next game in the collection. So going on to two, they introduced a lot of stuff, right? The game's a lot more linear. It's pretty much just point A to point B with maybe a little secret off to the side, which, if I'm being honest, I like that, right? I have no problem with that. I like having linear action games where there's just little goodies around the corners every so often. It keeps you on your toes, but mostly it's just fight to fight to fight, action to action. And so I really like that about Ninja Gaiden 2. The weapons that Ryu has, I think they're very cool and interesting. I like them a lot. The DLIM system, and then expanding on that, the OT, the obliteration technique system, I think is probably the best single feature that the entire Ninja Gaiden series has. I think it's really awesome that you'll have parts of your moveset that are good for different things, right? You have the launchers, the guard breakers, you have just the DPS so if you're trying to kill something quick, and then you have the moves that do good DLIM. And so different moves have different purposes. And I think that's really important for a game like this where you have a big move list where your moves have purposes, right? Like you've got something like a Musou game, which, kind of these games kind of remind me of Musou games a little bit, just if they were hard, right? With the way that the combos are laid out and the moves are laid out. In those games, you have like one or two combos that are worth using, and their whole rest of your move list is just fluff. And I appreciate that these games, while is a lot of fluff in your move lists, unfortunately, there's less because your moves have reasons to exist. And also, I think it's really fun to just like wail on an enemy, and then you have something to react to, right? You're not just combo matting an enemy like you do in Devil May Cry, which is something I don't like as much about Devil May Cry, and it's something I don't like as much about late game Neo 2 as well, where you're just kind of walloping on an enemy for an extended period of time until they die. In this game, you have something to react to, so at any time they could get delimbed, and you can drop them out of your combo and save them for iframes later, or you could drop them out of your combo and OT them so that you have essence to get somebody else with. Just really cool. Excellent system. I think that's the best innovation this series has by far. You have... what else do we have? The Ninpo is pretty cool. It is a lot more fun in future installments, but it's cool to just have like a resource to spend for a powerful move. And then some stuff that I don't so much like is the play style this game kind of encourages. There are some options that are just strictly like more effective than others, right? Like you have your guillotine's throws, which will provide you with like a second and a half of iframes, and then also get an enemy off of your screen. If you throw an enemy into a wall, it will have a good shot at delimbing them. Your on-landing ultimate techniques, that's the big thing I kind of have an issue with. And that's because your essence metagame basically just becomes fight an enemy, kill it ASAP, get the essence to drop on landing UT, kill more enemies, use the essence that they drop, repeat forever because you have iframes. Now obviously on higher difficulties it's not that simple, but like it kind of is though. Like it really feels like that's the playstyle you have to have because that's the playstyle the game forces you to have. You have to have iframes all the time, and that's the best way to play the video game while having iframes. And so that was kind of a bit of a bummer when I was playing through Master Ninja on the Finbusa mod, which I'll talk about later. It just the playstyle of having explosive grenades everywhere on the screen at all times constantly, just it made the game very one-dimensional. and which is a shame because this is a game that has a lot of depth to it when it's not that. You know what I mean. So we'll talk about Ninja Gaiden 3 next. So Ninja Gaiden 3 is an interesting one. Before I had played Ninja Gaiden 4, it had my favorite version of the combat in a Ninja Gaiden game. Um, I thought that it was really cool how smoothly your character would control on the ground. I thought it was really cool, the way the slide works as opposed to the dodge in 2 and in 1. 3 in general is just a very smooth game, very fast paced, which was great because I'm gonna be honest, Ryu controls pretty not great in 1 and 2. Like, yeah, you can get used to it. Yeah, you can practice it, but like, come on. You're tripping if you don't believe that he has like not the best controls, right? Like the camera is not good. He cannot. He's not very agile. You can't really precision anything, right? Which is funny in a game where you have to do some platforming. It's just it's frustratingly imprecise and clunky and sluggish. And 3 is better about that. Now 3 also has some nonsense to it as well, right? Steel on Bone is their big new mechanic that they introduced. And again, much like the ultimate techniques, it's interesting, sort of, but there's problems with it, right? And those problems become more apparent on higher difficulties, where let's talk about there's an enemy in there. It's like a big brutish fiend. And when you fight those fiends, they have a lot of HP. So you could attack them and hope that you get the D-limb so that you can OT them. That could take a while. Or you could just sit there blocking or fighting something else and then wait for them to do a red attack and then steel on bone them. And that's probably faster and safer and easier than actually fighting them, right? And that's a theme that happens when you play on higher difficulties, especially in the first stage or two where you don't have your upgrades. Same thing. You could attack your enemies, do like 6 strings on them until they finally die or you can OT them. Or you could just, wait for them to do a red attack and then steel on bone, and that's the game. And it's like, unfortunately, they balance the game in such a way where it's like, why wouldn't you, right? Like, the only reason you wouldn't play that way is if you were avoiding playing that way, because on paper, you should just do that until you can flesh out your kit more later. And then, just back to the OTs, or excuse me, the UTs. Same deal, right? Like, it's like, why wouldn't you just use your UTs? The only reason you wouldn't is if you were specifically not, trying not to for your own fun. And this is going to revisit us again on 4. 3 also had just very expanded move lists, where you would have the ability to hold your heavy key at any point in your combo where you did a heavy input. And then you could either continue to hold it to charge a UT, or you could let it go and it would do a I think they call them neutral heavies in the community, but you had like a move tied to letting go of the held heavy after your strings. That's pretty cool. Um, and also, just an aside, it had the coolest rendition of fists in my opinion, and I think the fists are really cool in general. So I really like what they did with the fists, just rampaging through enemies like Wolverine. I thought it was pretty cool. So talking about 4 now, and that was the most recent one I played. Obviously, I kind of played them in order. Um, 4 finally made the game control smoothly, right? Like, I love the way Yakumo and Ryu control in Ninja Gaiden 4. Like, when I press the control stick in a direction, they go in that direction. I don't have to deal with Ryu turning around like a freight carrier. I don't have to deal with, like, the annoying thing of being, like, off by a pixel when I'm trying to climb a ladder. So then I have to, like, step back, and then I have to turn around, and then I have to go back to the ladder. Just a nightmare, and that's just not how 4 is. 4 also, the move set that Yakumo has is so cool in 4. I love it. I think that the Blood Raven, or whatever they call it, Blood Raven, I think. I love that system. I like having a limited resource that I can spend on really powerful moves. And it leans more into the DLIM OT system, which is already like my favorite singular thing about the Ninja Gaiden series, right? Like, you're spending this resource for powerful moves that have a higher chance to DLIM enemies. They are slow usually, but they have good crowd control, good stagger. Just everything about that system is awesome. You can also spend it while you're blocking to make your blocks better. So those attacks, which would have in other Ninja Gaidens, have broken your guard and or done massive chip damage. You can just block them and spend meter to not take that stuff, but it's a limited resource rate. I just think that's cool. I love that. Um, they kind of changed the blocks as well, where it's like you have a finite number of blocks, and so that's kind of how they put a speed limit on how much you can sit there blocking forever, as opposed to other games where they would just eventually start throwing unblockables at you. Like, as far as I'm concerned, at the end of the day, it's not a meaningful difference between the two. There's some who would, that I've heard express that they think that's a cheapening of the game's design. I don't really think so. Like, at the end of the day, you're still playing the game the same. Whatever the reason is, you're sitting there blocking just to get your bearings or to wait for an appropriate opening and then start fighting. And I don't care if it's because the game says I can only block 5, 6, 7, 8 attacks, or if it's because I know they're going to start grabbing me, because the way I play the video game ends up being the same either way. You know what I mean? Uh, so what else about 4? The story was easily the best the Ninja Gaiden series has had, um, which isn't saying a lot because, Ninja Gaiden stories are a meme anyway. But, like, they actually tried with 4. They tried with 3 as well. They just should have tried harder. But 4, I think they did a good job, right? It's a perfectly serviceable, like action movie plot line. And so I think that is in line with what Ninja Gaiden is trying to be. Like, action movie of insert year here. So I was very pleased with it. And yeah, just revisiting Yakumo. His design, combat-wise, is just so good. His weapons are awesome. His blood raven stuff is awesome. Just love it. Now, what I don't love so much about 4, it does lose a lot of the in-combat precision that older Ninja Gaidens had, right? Like, your position matters less in Ninja Gaiden 4. Controlling enemy positions matters less because you have so much, like, mobility. And specifically, like, sliding mobility, right? Like, with, in this video here, I'm using MS Fang. I have a little bit of range, but, like, I still need to get close enough to my enemies to actually fight them, right? Like with Dragon Sword, if I do a head stomp on somebody, I have to like do a little micro positioning so I can follow up on the head stomp because it doesn't have enough range otherwise, which is completely not an issue in 4. So you lose a little bit of a dimension of combat there. Do I care that much? No, not really. But it is something worth mentioning. The essence in 4 got a downgrade because now it gives you a little bit of trickle health back, which is cool. I like that. But the problem is, it's like the trickle health is nice, but it's so inconsequential. Like, why wouldn't you just continue to OT spam or UT spam? Which sucks because, like, that was my issue with 2. Is why wouldn't you just UT spam? And in 4, it's even worse because you're not even getting money out of, like, you're not losing money from doing UT. You're losing like a pixel of health, which who cares? So, that's kind of a bit of a bummer. I wish they had done a little bit more to discourage the ease of iframes in 4, right? Like, the guillotine throw is also, like, giga buffed in 4. Like, you can do, like, a 360-degree guillotine throw. Like, in 2, if you wanted to guillotine somebody into a wall, you would have to stand in such a way that there would be a direct line between you, the enemy, and the wall. In 4, that is not the case. You can be with your own back against the wall and then go forward into an enemy, grab them, and then do a complete 180 and throw them against that wall you were just against. Which, I mean, I'm fine with, right? Like, I'm coming from a combined, like, Neo background plus, like, a beat-em-up background. And I do think these games play quite a bit like what I would expect a 3D beat-em-up to. And I'm used to throws being, like, super giga-busted unfair from beat-em-ups because that's kind of like your primary defensive option in those games often. So, I'm fine with it. It's just, it is something that is a massive difference in that game versus 2 and 3, especially. So yeah, I wish they had done something to make Essence more interesting and to discourage UTs more. Personally, I think it would be cool if the blood orbs gave you a decent amount of, like, blood gauge back, so you would actually have a reason to want to absorb them in combat, because they are not useful in combat. The trickle healing is not helpful for combat. Maybe over the course of several combats, the trickle healing is useful for topping yourself off, but it's not useful. The heal you get is not going to make any lick of difference in a fight. uh, in my opinion. So yeah, I just think it'd be interesting if they gave you a little bit of blood gauge back or something. Just just make them a little more interesting than UT spam orbs. Okay, so that's pretty much it for my basic thoughts on the games. And again, I kind of tried to focus mostly on like things that I disliked or thought were not ideal. But I want to clarify, these are awesome games. Um, and I could spend like an entire video talking about the stuff that I liked about all of them. So don't let me criticizing them put you off. So now I'm going to just hop into my tier list here. Get out of that video there. So what I've done here is I've got a tier list, and I'm going to just throw in some other Team Ninja games that I've played in the past. And they're going to serve as sort of a milestone or a benchmark that I'm going to be using to compare the Ninja Gaiden games to. Alright, so first things first, Nioh 2 is an all-time favorite game, just period for me, all genres. It'd probably be my number 2 game of all time, just of everything. This is how much I like that game. Is it perfect? No, of course not. But games can be my favorite of all time and have problems, right? So, Nioh 2 feeds into Nioh 1 because Nioh 2 existing makes Nioh 1 worse. What do I mean by that? Well, Nioh 1 was cool, right? The combat was fun. The story was interesting enough, right? It was cool to see historical figures in an action game and like how they interacted with the situation that was happening in the Nioh game. There were cool levels, there were cool movesets, there were cool weapons, a lot of cool stuff. But Nioh 2 just did everything better, right? So what you're left with at the end of the day with Nioh 1 is a less balanced game and a less fun game than Nioh 2. And the only thing it has going for it is that some of the levels that it has are not present in Nioh 2, and you might like those levels. So I have to put Nioh 1 in other, and this conversation is going to become relevant with the Ninja Gaiden games coming up soon. Wolong is a really fun game. I love this game. I loved it when it released, except for the performance, which was really bad, on PC at least. But then, when they fixed the performance and they did the patches, this game is like one of the most improved video games I've ever seen in my life. Because it got so much good content with the just free updates that they did to it. Not to mention, the paid updates that it got good stuff as well. So what you have at the end of the day is their spirit system, which is really cool. That's how that's their version of ki or stamina. It builds up as you attack, and you can spend it. But if it gets reduced to negative 1,000, which is the equivalent of 0 in a normal game, and you get hit, you get staggered. So there's a lot of risk versus reward. You can continuously spend meter and put yourself in debt down to a negative 1,000. So just like attack meter, attack spell, attack martial art. You could do that. It's risky. If you ever get hit, you're stunned. And I just think that's a really fun mechanic. The wizardry is cool. There's a whole element system where if they hit you with water and you had a fire buff, it'll negate your fire buff because water beats fire. Stuff like that. Really cool game. Stranger of Paradise, that's the Final Fantasy action game. I love this game. It has like the best itemization I've ever seen with like a Diablo style loot system. The gameplay is fun. The post game content is a lot of fun. The story is really stupid, but I love it. Yeah, this is like the best game that's not an all-time favorite on this list, in my opinion. Rise of the Ronin, this one didn't really grip me as much. I'm gonna put it in good games. Because the gameplay when you're fighting stuff is incredible. They did an excellent job with just nailing fights. There's a dojo mode where you can refight bosses that you fought previously. And those fights are so good that dojo mode could have been its own video game. Like it could have been like an indie game, like a boss rusher, and it would have been a good game. There's just so much fluff in this game. It reminds me of Final Fantasy Rebirth. There is just so much fluff. It detracts from the experience, in my opinion. Um, right? Like I have to go through a diluted story, a diluted world map experience, diluted traversal, diluted side quests, of which that's like 90% of your gameplay, just to get to the cool part, which is the fights, which are awesome. So that's Rise of the Ronin. Okay, so now we're getting into the Ninja Gaidens. Which ones am I rating here? I've played the Sigmas, right? Sigma 1, Sigma 2, Razor's Edge, and the Master Collection. But I've also played Ninja Gaiden 2, Fiendboos's mod. Black, I think it's called Ninja Gaiden 2 Sigma Black, before actual Ninja Gaiden 2 Black came out. Now, my understanding is Fiendboos's mod is pretty close to OG2. It's harder in some places, easier in some places, different in other places, but for the most part, you're getting the OG2 experience. All right, so I'm going to talk about both of those when I get to two. Ninja Gaiden Sigma, I just played Sigma. I understand it's close enough to what Black offers that they should be comparable enough, unless you're being pedantic about it. So Ninja Gaiden 1, we talked about this earlier. I'm going to put this in good games above Rise of Ronin, if I can do that. There we go. Like, I liked it. I respected what it was going for. But, like, without nostalgia for this game from 2004, it just doesn't have the oomph for me, right? You know, one of these days I'm going to come back to it and I'm going to play through the other difficulties. But that's probably going to be the last thing I do with the Ninja Gaiden series, right? Like, I think I would just prefer to play any of the other three before I play Ninja Gaiden Sigma again. That being said, the game is awesome, and I had a really good time when I was playing it the first time, and it really, like, wowed me. And I was like, wow, this is what Ninja Gaiden is, huh? This is pretty dope. So that's where I'm putting Ninja Gaiden Sigma. Sigma 2, I'm going to talk about Sigma because that's what I have the most hours in. I've played through all the difficulties except for Master Ninja, which I'm halfway through right now. So that's to color my experience. I've played through, all the difficulties, and I'm halfway through Master Ninja. On Fiendboos's mod, I just played Master Ninja, that's it, and I got about 5 or 6 stages in before I decided I didn't like that version of the game. So talking about Sigma 2, I'm going to put Sigma 2 in Incredible Games, and I'm going to put it above Wolong, actually. As much as I like Wolong, I'm going to put Gaiden 2 above it. Fiendboos's mod, and by extension, what I believe Ninja Gaiden 2 Vanilla is mostly like, that's going to be something a little bit more like, depending on what difficulty I'm playing. If I'm playing Master Ninja, I'm putting it like here, above Sigma. If I'm playing something below Master Ninja, I couldn't say. Maybe it gets higher. But the reason I would have it lowered is because just the playstyle becomes one-dimensional, and I don't like that. It's a bummer to have such an interesting game where you have all these options, all these weapons, all these ninpo, and you have like a whole system of crowd control, crowd management, delim, reacting, and then you also have like all these strings and combos on your weapons. And then you get to Master Ninja and you're like, okay, well that's great, but you're gonna die if you do 90% of that stuff. So what you have to do is, you have to play a very specific kind of way, whittle the crowd down, and then maybe you can start expressing, some agency after you've done that. And I didn't find that fun. Like, always exploding, I didn't find fun. Always being in danger of exploding, I didn't find that fun. That's not a challenge that I'd enjoyed dealing with. It'd be like if you were playing an MMO and you just had orange circles spawning under your character 100% of the time, always. And it was more tiring and tedious than it was fun for me. And I understand there's people who love it. Good for you. I'm glad you love it. I didn't. All right. Ninja Gaiden 3. So this is going with Neo 1. Why? Well, everything I liked about Ninja Gaiden 3, the smoother combat, the more viable options, discouraging, some of the stuff that I didn't like about previous games, everything about it, Ninja Gaiden 4 does better. And so now that I'm looking at Ninja Gaiden 4, and I'm like, oh, well, my character controls better, combat is more fluid, I have fewer issues with the clunkiness of older games, like not being able to OT the person I want, or my stuff missing when it shouldn't, or the camera being terrible. Ninja Gaiden 4 doesn't have those issues. So yeah, Ninja Gaiden 4 definitely going in the top of incredible games for me, I think. Like, it's not an all-time favorite yet, and I don't think it will be, but I am having a blast of a time, right? Like, I've already played through hard mode twice, and because I played on Game Pass is when I played this. I had the Game Pass trial, and I was like, oh yeah, Ninja Gaiden 4's on here. I wanted to try that. And I was supposed to just play it for like a couple of hours to be like, yay or nay, am I buying this? I ended up just playing through the whole game and got like almost all the achievements, and I'm like, okay, I need to stop so that when I actually buy this game on PlayStation, I don't have to get all the achievements again. But I mean, I got it on PlayStation, and I'm halfway through, the first playthrough there, and I'm just having a blast. I'm loving this game. There are some complaints, like there's a lot of downtime that I don't understand why it's there, right? Like a lot of parts where you have to see a cutscene, or you have to have a walking segment on the walkie-talkie, or you have to talk with NPCs, and it's like, why is this here? Like, even in its own game, when you're playing with Ryu, they cut all those sections out. There's no loading screen, there's no nothing. So why can't Yakumo have the same benefit when you're playing Master, like when you're playing Chapter Select, I mean. The Master Ninja, no complaints, right? Like, it's the same thing I'm used to from Sigma 2. The enemies do giga damage. They're extremely aggressive in an interesting way, though. Like, in this game, I don't feel like I'm just exploding from incendiary shurikens 100% of the time. It's more nuanced, right? Like, you'll have guys diving in like a coordinated swim team to hit you with sword swings, or you'll have some projectile enemies, and then you can go specifically target those enemies down. And I just really like the experience so far. Now, one of the big complaints I did have is when you try to OT things, your camera will be stuck until it's like 100% done. And Ninja Gaiden 2 does not do this. And I can't remember if 3 does it, and the fact that I can't remember if it does it means that it probably doesn't. But like, what I mean by this is, in 2, when you OT somebody, there's a little cinematic, right? The camera angle will go where it wants to go, and it'll show you the OT. But then at the end of it, like after you chop their head off, or you do whatever the finisher is, you have like a little bit of time, like a quarter second or something, where you're still invincible. You still can't control your character, but you can move the camera around, so you can kind of get yourself ready for whatever you're going to do next. And in Ninja Gaiden 4, this is not the case. You're just stuck. Yakumo has chopped their head off. He's stabbed him in the gut, whatever it is that he does, and he's standing there Ara farming, and you just have to watch it. You're just staring at him, standing there for like half a second, and you can't change the camera, and it's so frustrating. Why can't you move the camera? Why did they change this from older games? Like, there is nothing more frustrating than knowing there are like 3 enemies behind you, and you're like, I need to come up with a game plan for those 3 enemies. And in other games, all you had to do was just turn the camera and you can look at them and you're like, okay, here's what I'm going to do. In this game, you can't do it. You just get thrown out of your iframes into the frying pan, and you have to change your camera or just commit to something. So like, I don't know. Why did they change that? I don't know. Ryu, his gameplay feels tacked on, right? Like, I don't even, my conspiracy theory is I don't think Ryu was intended to be a character in this game, like a playable character. I think they had just done, the 5th weapon for Yakumo. I think they were always going to do that. And then at some point they're like, yeah, we got some extra dev time. Why don't we just throw Ryu in there? And then they just copy pasted that moveset, gave him Nenpo, called it a day. Maybe that's right, maybe that's wrong, but that's how it feels. That's how his character feels. Like a bit underbaked, and just really strong to compensate. Do I care that much? No. Some people, that the Ryu's sideline role in this game is like a game breaker for them. Not for me. I couldn't really care less. I'm playing this game for Yakumo and his gameplay. Same reason I played DMC4 for Nero and his gameplay. So if Dante's game had issues in that game, which it did, who cares? I'm playing this for Nero, not for Dante. But I know that's not the case for everybody. Anyway, yeah, that's my rankings. Massively impressed with this franchise, right? I had an awesome time. Again, $19.99 for the Master Collection is such a good price for what amounted to 2 of like some of my favorite games of the decade, and then one game that I also really enjoyed, even if it wasn't necessarily my favorite. Incredible. Great series. Thanks for watching. I know this is a really unscripted, rambly video, but I hope you enjoyed hearing my thoughts as like a new Ninja Gaiden player who felt, good enough about the series to binge it, and hope you'll have a good one.